If you're feeling stuck in life, but you have dreams and desires and this grand vision to build an incredible life for yourself, you want to make a ton of money, build wealth, help a ton of people, make a huge impact, build a massive brand, an audience and following, take care of your people, look after them. This one's for you. So there's an incredible quote that I'm going to start off with, which says, "The chains of habit are too weak to be felt until they're too strong to be broken." What this means in English is that if you keep doing the things that you've been doing, you'll stay stuck forever until you're ready to change. But by the time that you're ready to change, it's already too late. It's gonna be very difficult to change. And so the most successful people I know are the ones that change themselves, their identity, their standards, their habits, their actions over and over and over very rapidly. You can bend time, you can warp it to your advantage. And one of my mentors, Dan Martell, he told me this one time. I think we might have been on a jet flying to Texas last year, but he said that every 6 months, your calendar should look completely different than it did 6 months ago. So that means every 6 months you've got to be doing things completely different. And if you really think about it, like the more you do all of the things that have gotten you to where you're at right now, the more you're just gonna stay there. And so let me tell you a story. About 5 years ago, I graduated college, moved back home with my parents, and I had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, except for one thing. I knew I wanted to start an online business, but I had no idea what that meant. And I was not the type of person capable of starting that, capable of running a business, because I didn't have discipline. I didn't have the skill of consistency. I didn't have a foundational base of knowledge and understanding. I didn't learn enough about it yet, right? And so what I had to do was I had to take stock of myself, my current identity, my actions, my habits, the thoughts, the beliefs that I held, and ask myself, is this going to help me get like what I have now, who I am today? Is this going to get me to that next level? And the plain, cold, hard truth answer was absolutely not. Something had to change. And that something was me. And so I wrote down all of the things that I needed to change. I said, okay, all I wanted to do was make like 5 to 10K a month so I could be rich as hell and travel the world and have a ton of fun and freedom, right? That was my goal. At the time, I was broke. I had no money, no income, nothing coming in. I spent all of the money I didn't have on a course, and that's what taught me this. And I was in my parents' basement. COVID just hit. My girlfriend dumped me. My dog died, all within like the span of a month. And so I was ground zero, had no idea what I wanted to do with my life, and no idea how I was going to get out of that situation and that hole that I was in. But that course, that mentor told me that I had to change. And that's how you grow and evolve. So I did something extremely drastic. I go to the extreme. I have a very all in or all out tendency. And so I went all in. I said, all right. Because after like my girlfriend dumped me, lockdown sit, I'm in Canada. Beautiful day out today. But where I live is really nice. I think I'm not going to get into politics here, but I think we're a little cooked. But nonetheless, I had nothing to lose. And I knew my current version of myself was never going to get me to where I wanted to get to. And so what I did is, because I had no reason to have a phone anymore, I turned it off and put it in my drawer for 6 months. I've never felt more free in my life than doing that. I deactivated my Instagram account and I just went ghost. I started 75 Hard. I heard about it, and that was like the first like catalyst that completely helped me shift and change my identity. And so it was this big challenge, this big task, this big monstrous thing that was very difficult that I committed to. And I said, I will finish this whether I like it or not. I know it's going to be hard. That's the point. And it should be difficult. And so I did it. And I took about a week off, And then I did it again, and then again, and again. And every single day that I would show up and do the difficult things and do the standards that were required of me, my non-negotiables every single day, I was killing that old version of myself every single day. Like death by 1,000 cuts. Each day was just one little cut, killing that old version of me that was lazy, that was broke, that was unmotivated, that was looking for distractions and excuses, and looking to do anything except for the work that needed to be done. And so after about a year and a bit of doing that, it was probably like 2 years actually, I dug myself out of that hole. I finally built a business that was making 7-8K a month, got super burnt out and hated it, and then worked for my business coach at the time. I ran his ads, became a sales rep, so signed the clients, and then also the CSM, coaching them all, and helped him go from 40K a month to about 220K a month in like 6 to 7 months. And I was making like 10 to 20K a month. It was unreal. I felt like an absolute baller. And so I got my own condo, and it was great. And then from there, kind of got like complacent and comfortable again. Some shit happened with him, and so I ended up quitting. A few months later, started my own business, which was Summit. And this is where I went through this death and rebirth process all over again. And so I said, all right, my one goal for like my entire life, I will dedicate my entire life, and it will revolve around this one thing, which was I will do whatever it takes to hit $100,000 a month. That's all I cared about. And so I created this identity for myself, which was 100K a month Jeremy. What would 100K a month Jeremy do in this scenario right now? How would he operate? How would he react? How would he act? What habits does he have? What beliefs does he hold about the world? What does he believe to be true? What does he believe he deserves? And so I revolved my entire life around this identity of 100K a month Jeremy. Sure enough, 7 months in, hit my first 100K a month. And so it was this huge mountain to climb. And in order to get to the top and to reach the summit, I had to become a different person. I had to become a different version of myself, because old Jeremy was not capable of doing that. He didn't have the consistency, the discipline. He didn't have the creativity. He didn't have the very broad shoulders to support all of the extra responsibility and weight that comes with being an entrepreneur, especially at a 7-figure level. And so I had to go through a lot of difficult, challenging times to forge myself into the man who can be capable of building a 7-figure company. And then I did that. And then I hit lots of 100K. Now it's like a horrible month if we only do 100. And so every time you level up, every time you have a death and a rebirth, your standards increase. And when your standards increase, that becomes your new baseline of operations. And so when you raise your baseline, then what used to be difficult becomes very easy now. And a few months ago, when I hosted a client retreat in Miami, I talked about this thing, which was this graph where it's like when you start something new, you're very like optimistic. It's super exciting, right? It's like an uninformed optimism. You're high, you're like, let's go, I'm fired up. And then after like a week or 2 or 3, the excitement dies down, and then you fall into informed pessimism, which means you're now informed of what it takes and what's required of you to actually do this on a daily basis. And now you're like, oh, this kind of sucks, right? All the excitement's kind of drowned out a little bit. It's tapered off, and now you're like, man, this isn't that fun anymore. And so from there, though, that's where most people quit. But you got to push through that, and then you get to success and fulfillment and achievement. And then that becomes your new standard. And then you go through the exact same thing again and again and again. And so after I hit 100K a month, then I kind of had this like realization where I was like, like what now? And then I was like, okay, the next thing is like, when I make my first million, I'm buying my dream car, the murdered out Lambo. And then I did that, and then I bought the car. And then after that, I was like, I was kind of lost, because I felt like I had achieved what I set out to do, and I had like made it, and I didn't really have another goalpost. And so I felt like last year I just kind of like flatlined it, like I don't know, 100, 150K a month, which is not horrible by any means. But then like with that, you start hiring a lot of people, spending more on ads, and then the margins go down and it's not as fun. And you got a lot of money coming in, a lot of money coming out, and it's like it's not as fun and flashy as it looks on the surface. And I know a lot of guys that are kind of at that level, they experience the exact same thing. And so one thing that I did is like, all right, I got to pick a new thing. And so I decided I'm going to run an ultra marathon with 5 weeks of training. And keep in mind, I don't think I've ever ran more than like 10K in my life. Like, I'm not a runner. I'm not built to run at all. And but I said, fuck it, I'm going to do that. And so the reason I chose 5 weeks is because there was 5 weeks until my birthday. And so I looked at, all right, from here, you see the lake? If you go down that way, the lake goes all the way up to my hometown where I was born. It's like a 40-minute drive from here, and it's a really small town. But at the end of it, not actually along this lake, but along a couple other ones on the other side of the mountain, there's a path. And so you can run from here to that town on like a running or a biking path. It used to be railroad tracks that turned into a trail. And so I was like, all right, I'm gonna run from my front door of my condo building to my hometown on this trail. And it was like 52K. And I was like, fuck it, 5 weeks. I looked up one video. I literally looked up a video of how to prep for an ultra marathon. It was a 6-month training plan. I cut it down to 5 weeks and said, let's go. And so race day came. I stepped out of my condo, I had my backpack on, probably 25 pounds in there. Because it was like, my birthday is in December and I'm in Canada, so it was snowy out. It was cold. And so I had my winter boots. I had full change of clothes, pair of shoes, all of my food and water for the entire journey, because like once you get out of the city here, there's not many places to stop. And so it was just me fully unsupported, and I didn't train with 25 pounds on my back, so my knees and ankles were shot like 5 to 10K in, and it was living hell. But I told myself I was going to die before I didn't finish. And when you do difficult things, you develop this level of competence that breeds so much self-confidence. And so by nature of doing something very difficult, it implies that failure is an option, right? If it's difficult, if it's very challenging, there's a high degree of likelihood that you're going to fail and you're not going to hit it. That's the point. That's the exciting point, right? That's the reason why we choose to do these things, because when there is a consequence, when there is a potential of failure, then when we actually do succeed, it's so much more worth it. You feel so much more fulfillment and so much better. And so in order to have a death of your old identity and a rebirth into somebody new, you have to do very challenging, difficult things. And then 3 months after that, well, I didn't run a single time after I finished that. And 3 months after that, I decided to run a marathon with zero training with one of my clients, Eric, in Vegas. And it was on Mount Charleston. And he's like a marathon runner, and I'm not. And so well, technically we signed up for the race a month before. So I was like, oh, a month of training, I did this last time, I'll be good. I ran one time, I got wicked shin splints, and I could hardly walk for that entire month. And so I'm in Vegas, went to the Hormozzi's event, and then the day before race day is like the expo, and I could still hardly walk. My shin splints were so bad. And I was like, all right, let me just ask someone. So I talked to somebody. I was like, hey, what happens if I like hypothetically can't finish? Because we were supposed to meet up at like 2:30 in the morning, and they bust us up to the top of this mountain, and then we run down the mountain into Vegas. And I'm like, what happens if I like physically can't move because my shin splints are so bad? They're like, oh, we got trucks every kilometer or two or whatever. Like, you're good to go. We'll drive you down. I'm like, all right. So I went to an outdoor store. I bought ladies size 1 compression sleeves for my calves and men's size 1 compression socks. to just make my calves as tight as physically possible so there was nowhere to go. And it worked. And sure enough, 3 hours and 55 minutes later, me and Eric crossed the finish line. And it was living hell during that time. But we pushed through. And the level of confidence that you get after doing something like that, it's hard to describe, because you just become this new person that you're like, oh, if I can do that, what else can I do? What other business goals can I do? What other fitness goals can I do? What other relationship goals can I do? And you start to stack all of these wins, whether they're small or big. You start to stack them all behind you and underneath you to build this massive foundation of competence. And that's where your confidence is formed. That's where your confidence is born. And so if people have low self-confidence, chances are they probably haven't done a lot of impressive things that are very difficult and challenging, or maybe they did, but it was a long time ago, and they don't have something right now that they're working towards. They don't have something that they just finished that was very challenging and difficult, that required them to step up into a new identity, into a new version of themselves. And that's where fulfillment comes from, because when you hit a goal and you kind of just stay there and you plateau, you end up literally dying, because you don't have a target. You have nothing to go towards. And like human nature, we have to be progressing. We have to be growing. Otherwise, we're stagnant, we're dying. Like, think about like water, for example. If you have a pond, if there's no inflow of new water, there's no outflow of the old water, it just goes green and everything dies. You got to have water coming in and water going out. It's got to be this cycle. It's got to be refreshed, and things have to be renewed. And if you don't have that sense of like death and rebirth in your life, then you're never going to be like fulfilled or successful. And so what I want you to do is like pick one thing that sounds very difficult. One thing, and here's the thing too, it's probably been on your mind for a while. You've probably thought about this before. You're probably like, oh man, that'd be so cool if one day I could do that. Like, I used to think that all the time about like running and ultras and stuff like that. Like, I read David Goggins' first book, Can't Hurt Me, like 5 times. And I was like obsessed with that. I watched all of his YouTube videos, and I was like, hell yeah, one day, you know, maybe a few years from now, I'm gonna run an ultra. One day I'm gonna run a marathon. But that one day never came until I decided that today was the day that I was gonna start. And I hit the pavement the next morning. And then 5 weeks later, I ran my first ultra. That day will never come if you keep pushing one day further and further and further out. Every single time you tell yourself, oh, I'm gonna start tomorrow, I'm gonna start next month, I'm gonna do it next year. You're delaying your success, you're delaying your fulfillment. You're telling yourself that I'm going to be mediocre, I'm gonna keep doing the things that keep me stuck, that keep me unfulfilled. Maybe they got you here, but they're not gonna get you there. You have to have a death and a rebirth in order to get to that next level. It's physically impossible to grow and to get to the next level if you don't currently shed the skin that you have right now. You don't grow new skin that's fresh, that's exciting, that's alive, that's passionate, if you don't first shed the skin that's been holding you back and dragging you down. And so pick something that's very difficult. It can be business, it can be fitness, it can be both, for all I care. It doesn't matter. But pick one thing that's like going to force you to become somebody completely different, force you to completely reshift your calendar, reshift your habits, your actions, your beliefs, your thoughts, your standards, the way you carry yourself, the way you present yourself, the way you show up in relationships. Do something that's going to drastically force you to grow, to evolve. And then ask yourself, who do I need to become in order to achieve this very difficult goal with ease? So like I asked myself, who do I need to become to achieve 75 hard? Who do I need to become to achieve 100K a month? Who do I need to become to run an ultra marathon? Who do I need to become to achieve this goal? Ask yourself that. Who do you need to become? And then start acting like that person today. With that, get after it. See you in the next one.